to allow me to share a lesson I've created for you. It's on using formative assessment to drive instruction. And it's one of the things I think college students really need to know. Not only how to administer assessment, but what do you do with the information? How does it drive your instruction? And so that's what I'm going to present this morning. Thought we'd start off with a bit of humor. If anything I've learned in my 19 years of teaching is that students' perspective on things can bring a chuckle or a laugh. I know I'm having trouble reading at the 3rd grade level. That's why when I grow up, I'm going to be a 2nd grade teacher. And if only life worked that way. We know that our students need to be pushed. They need to be making grade level objectives. How do we do that? And we're going to get to that in just a moment. But I want you to think about, too, that 2% of all students in public schools, 10% of them are English language learners. And actually that number has increased. The slide should say 20%. Because in 1980, 4.7 million students in public schools had English as a 2nd language. That means their primary language or their native language is different than English. That number increased to 11.2 million in 2009, and it continues to increase. I see it here at my own school. 50% of the students in my school speak Spanish as their native language, and English is their 2nd language. We have a 2-way immersion program to accommodate that. So, as a future teacher, that's something we need to keep in mind, is that a lot of our students may be coming to us with a deficit because we don't know our English language. And that's where we're going to need to start with them. We need to meet them at where they're at and then move forward from there. What I'd like you to do is take the next 5 minutes. I have an article for you. It's called Delivering What Urban Readers Need. And we need to keep in mind, too, that urban readers have different needs than some of our other populations may have. And this article is really good at outlining what types of things they may need when they come to our classroom. So would you please take 5 minutes? At the end of that 5 minutes, I'm going to be asking you to share, so please be prepared. At this time, I would ask students to share things that they noticed from the article. For example, in the article, they have suggestions and strategies for urban readers, that they need to provide a balanced reading instruction. They need to identify those students that are at risk. And I think one of the most important aspects is they do identify those students that may be at risk, particularly Latino and African American populations. It said up to 70% of those urban learners are at risk for reading, having reading problems. What do we do in this case? Well, we need to identify early. We need to provide explicit, intensive, and systematic reading skills instruction. And we need to provide scaffolding or support that goes beyond the initial instruction. And this is how we do it. The teaching cycle is a really good way of explaining what we need to do. First, we need to collect data through the form of assessments. We use that assessment information to determine what next steps. We plan appropriately for the needs of the students based on the data we've collected. And then finally, we bring that instruction to our students so that they can come to a new understanding. In reading, one of the most important things children need to know are sight words. And this is how they can affect a child's performance. Children's knowledge of sight words and easy word recognition helps them to develop their understanding of the increased complex nature of the written language. By being able to quickly identify words, children are able to increase their reading speed and accuracy. Both factors directly impact their reading comprehension. So if they're struggling with a word, if they don't have a good basis for their sight words, that's all going to slow them down and directly affect their comprehension of the passage that they're reading. So, what we need to do is administer a sight word and decodable list. And why would we do that? Well, there's two important aspects. Readers must have a large sight word vocabulary. That's the words they recognize automatically. Second, the reader must have multiple ways to decode using the knowledge of the sound-symbol correspondence to identify words. Here's our assessment guidelines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the sight word decodable list so that you can get an idea of how do you administer this assessment and what the benefits are of it. What you need to do is children should be assessed on an individual basis in a quiet area of the room free of distractions. Possibly if you can find a small table where you and the child can sit side by side, that's ideal. I'm sorry, I need to switch back, I didn't realize. When you're administering the assessment, the script for that is in your handout. So if you look a second, you'll see that I've included that. Actually, it's by one of the documents. I know it's hard to see from here, but that's why I've included it, so that you can see it up close. And you can follow it as I go through demonstrating the procedure. The first thing you would do is you have your sight word decodable list. This is for you. For the student, you are going to have half sheet of paper and an index card, and they would be sitting next to me. I would actually, if I was having college students do this, I would have someone come up and demonstrate this skill with me and have them practice as I go along to model the teacher-student role. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the card and slowly expose from the pre-primer list. That's where we're going to start, is the very initial. Okay, should you have your pencil? The student would read through the list. So example, and, if they get it correct, you just put a dot. 2, you. If they struggle with the sound, then I put, or if it takes them longer than 3 seconds to provide the word, you're going to put a mark. I usually use a line instead of a check mark because the children really focus on, oh no, I got that wrong. And we don't want them to focus on that. We want them to focus on their responsibility right here. Was, they, his, at. If they get the initial sound, sometimes I'll write that down just for my own records on what skills they're using. And I lost track. I. When you flip it over, they struggle with it, they don't know it. Let's say they get the next 3 words incorrect. After they get 3 words incorrect in a row, what you want to do is ask them, do you know any other words on this list? Well, yes, I know man, and I know map. You didn't get the rest. What you do then is total up how many words the student knows. They got 11. Correct. This means they're in the pre-primer stage for reading. Now you have a level to start at with reading instruction. What you want to do is go back and analyze, and I kind of keep this in my mind as I'm going through the procedure. Were there mispronunciations? Were there substitutions? Did they have reversals? Did they use word families? Were they looking at chunks? Were they using initial sounds? For example, they could get their mouth ready. They knew that the sentence started with the initial sound of that. So, what I would like you to do right now is I'd like you to partner up One student is going to be the teacher, and the other is going to be the student. And then in about 5 minutes, we'll have you reverse roles so that you can practice the skill. If you at any time as I'm coming around the room, you have any questions, please just let me know and I'll be glad to help you. At this time, I'd be circulating around the room, making sure that students are implementing the strategy appropriately, seeing if they have any questions. If they're not using it correctly, I would intervene right at that moment so that they learn the correct method and have had a chance to practice it before they go back into a practicum setting. At this time, does anybody have any questions about the administration? It looks like that most people are understanding what to do and how to administer it. Can anybody think of a way how this tool would be effective in their classroom? And then I take feedback from students, how they would use it, what things they may learn, trying to go back over the information that I've really provided, and that this is a really good tool to get a lot of information from in just one simple test. The next thing we're going to go over is making words. And making words are multi-level lessons. The lessons meet the instructional needs of all students. The lessons are explicit and systematic. They teach students to look for patterns in words. They continue to support learners beyond the initial instruction. Students are actively engaged in the learning process. My students loved this when I did this because it is a very hands-on thing. It does meet students at from your beginning readers to those that excel, and the movement piece is particularly enticing to them. So in your packet, if you would take out, I have a making words sheet, and I left scissors on your table. What you're going to do, and your students would do, is they would get this sheet, you would take and cut right along the line. You can see I have the letters on here, D, P, R, S, S, E, I. And I tell them this is a word. It's an unknown word, and they have to try to guess what it is. So that's the challenge. At the very end, they have to try to uncode what the secret word is. So the first thing I would do is I'd start with a small word, and I would tell the students, this word is 3 letters long. The word is red. After that, I would have a student come up and I would have them manipulate the letters. Red. Okay. The next thing I would have students do is I would have them clap, chant, and write. We did all kinds of crazy things, but one of the things they love to do is they love to get up and move. So, for example, a student would come up, we do red. Red, R-E-D, red, red, R-E-D, red, and that's just a real simple one. We would throw balls, we would shoot hoops, and for each letter, so R, E, D, red, and then we'd pretend we were dribbling. All kinds of movements that could go with this activity. The next thing we would do is we'd either put it in a pocket chart and the students would write it down. So we are going to change the word now from red to rid. And I'd say all you have to do is move one letter. And so they get kind of excited. Rid, rid. What letter would we have to move to change the word red to rid? Okay. Once again, I select a student. I usually had popsicle sticks, and I would pull out a popsicle stick and ask the child to come up and change it. So they would come up.